أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمد ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. Since couple of weeks we are discussing subject pertaining to LGBTQ, and last Saturday we had started, in fact, running through the slides, because there's a lot of literature on this, and not one aspect. There are many aspects which, in fact, we need to know, but it's still, because of the time, because of the number of weeks which will be required, I decided that I may pick up the speed. But at certain places, wherever it's very important, I'll may read out those slides. Otherwise, I'll just be running through. As I had already submitted, that till 1950s, 60s in America and in West, in Europe, everywhere, homosexuality was banned. It was prohibited and it was punishable with death. And even after Renaissance and French Revolution, it was at some places, in some countries like France, for example, it was punishable by burning to death. It was so severe. But all of a sudden, in the backdrop of San Francisco gold rush, I had explained that, and World War II in New York, it came up, it sprang up, and then New York police conducted a raid in Christopher Street, in Stonewall Inn, Gay Inn, and the people of the Gay Inn, Stonewall Inn, they fought back for 6 days, and the police had to seek support from the law enforcement agencies. But still, by that time, the international opinion and the world opinion had turned out, as usually happens, that police is committing excesses and things like that. So the operation was halted. And from there, they got the boost, and then it came out in open. I have listed, but I don't know, I will not spend much time on that. When, for example, in America, the showing kiss on the television, the TV channel, was prohibited. But I'll show when that first kiss was shown on the television show. And in films, it was completely prohibited. But when the first film was made and it was screened, and when this terminology started changing, and it started appearing in the newspapers, in the media, and then it spread all along. And then it came in the courts also. It came in the grammar also. It came in the dictionary. It came in the literature. So all these aspects are with references I mentioned, but I will have no time to go into these details. That anyway, the term gender identity first time appeared in the literature in 1963. And this subject started being discussed openly in 1970s. It became feminist support was also on its side. I had in the beginning mentioned that right from the beginning, after French Revolution, the equal rights of women, women rights, and this homosexuality issue, these movements were supporting each other. So now it was in 1970s that feminist scholars, they adopted the term gender. Gender as a way of distinguishing socially constructed aspects of male-female differences from biologically determined aspects, sex. So it came in the literature. Then I had, there are so many milestones, but for example, as I said, the law community also then started accepting. In 1993, US Food and Drug Administration, FDA, they adopted the term. They used gender instead of sex, social construct instead of biological construct. But then they realized in 2011, very soon, very near, in 2011, FDA reversed this position because in medical it is very difficult. In medicine, the treatments are based on sex. For example, gynecological drugs cannot be administered to men. Similarly, there are many drugs and even hormones, which are male hormones, should not be administered to the women. But unfortunately, like testosterone, androgen, hormones like that, which are specific male hormones, they are being administered to women, or women are administering these, using these hormones, and they are affecting the sex of the developing infants, children, and young boys. Later in 2011, FDA reversed this position and they began using the same word, previous word, old word, sex, as the biological classification and gender as a person. But there is another catch in it. The problem continues. They started using gender as a person's own self-representation as a male or female, that the man can himself decide, person can himself decide, woman can herself decide what she is or what he is. They can say, I'm man, I'm woman. In 1999, very recently, Law Review article proposes legal definition of sex that emphasizes gender self-identification. Gender self-identification, and it is based on this law, this philosophy, that now you see that they simply ask a question that whether you are about the gender, and it's up to the person himself or herself to say anything that I'm so and so. And this is now legal debate. I'm not going into these details. I'll only emphasize only those points where I think that they need more explanation. So these discussions even continue in the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court decided that since in America there is an unfortunate history of sex discrimination, it is there, it was there, therefore they say that any question which comes about sex and gender, it has to be subjected to heightened scrutiny. This is a technical term, legal term, that whenever any case comes, for example, women take the case of abortion to the court. But recently we have seen the Supreme Court has reversed the 50-year-old judgment, and now they've banned it. So it is subjected to heightened scrutiny. There are different levels of scrutiny when you are dealing with a case which pertains to equal rights of women, women rights. Then it is very thoroughly discussed, debated in the Supreme Court or in the court, so that it doesn't have any cover or any hidden layer, which is in fact reflecting the sex discrimination in the society. But this is very important. This, I think, needs to be explained. The grammatical basis. In the first lecture, I had said that when they changed the philosophy, they differentiated the sex orientation, sex and gender. They defined sex as a biological construct and gender as a social construct. They changed the grammar. And when you change the grammar, you change the language. And the philologists say that you think When we speak, you think in your language, and you project yourself, you present yourself through that language. And by using that language continuously, particularly children, right from the school age, then they start using the grammar and the language now, which is particularly, it has come in the dictionaries, in the search engines. When they speak that language, they feel that way. And the studies show that the child is affected right from age 3. Age 3. Now, this is the agreed one. I have not seen any disagreement on that. It's such a deep subject. And they have included in the kindergarten, in the Montessori, in the schools, this language. In 1926, Henry Watson Fowler stated the definition pertained to grammar, and this is the right position, that this gender was adjective. But by separating it from sex, from the biology, and defining under social construct, they no more consider it as an adjective, they use it as a noun. This is a subtle point. Everybody would not be interested in knowing this. People would not like to know this. They will feel bored that why this is being told. But this is the basis. It is affecting the basic thinking in one's language. Gender is a grammatical term only. He emphasized that this only gender is a grammatical term only. It's not a social construct, but anyway. And this debate was in 1926, but after that, this debate has gone in the background. This is no more being discussed. Gender is socialized obverse of sex. This is a very important statement. Gender, historically, anthropologically, psychologically, I'm emphasizing psychologically, it has always been considered and defined as the socialized obverse of sex, not a separate thing. It is like two sides of the coin. It is the obverse of sex, which you see on the other side, the same thing. Male, masculine, female, feminine. It is called technically in the linguistics the socialized obverse of sex, but not a separate one. Yes, it is affected by sociology. It is the obverse of sex, but it is not a separate thing. It has been completely separated. In 1945, Madison Bentley defined gender as socialized obverse of sex. This is not my definition. That is why I've given it in inverted commas. It is, the correct definition is, what should be, and it has been defined by Bentley, that it is the socialized obverse of sex. It is not separate. It is the other side of the coin. And when we say obverse, it means that it's not the tail and the end. On the other side of the coin also, it is the same image. Both sides of the coin are the same. There is no difference even of tail and end as in the normal coin. But increasingly, gender has been separated and made distinct from and independent of biological sex solely as social construct. I had been discussing with this issue, even with doctors when I was the secretary, but they have only limited aspect when the terminology has changed in the medicine, in the medical dictionary, but they don't know even these aspects. They don't discuss these things. There is a philosophy of it. There's a history of it. There's anthropology of this. There's human history. There's human evolution. All these things have to be known and understood. But when you discuss with the doctor, he discusses only one aspect. I'll come to that also. Then Simon, in 1949, in his book, he stated that the second sex has been interpreted. That is the name of the book. That's the name of the book. The second sex. He has interpreted as the beginning of discussion between sex and gender in feminist theory. Right in the first lecture, I said that they distinguished, separated the definition, the language, and therefore the philosophy, and therefore the thinking process, human thinking process. They changed the human thinking process. And I also mentioned at one point that today in human history, the human brain, the thinking process is being controlled centrally by the search engines. And the search engines are constructed on the basis of algorithm which is fed into them. And the input which is already there, when the children search this, they search through the search engine, they find these answers. And this was then adopted not only by the LGBT, but the feminist theory. A social feminist theory was developed under which all these things are being developed. Now, gender role, I've discussed about it. I'm not going into these. But I had emphasized that we must know the difference between gender role and gender expression, and also gender identity. The difference between sex orientation and gender expression. The difference between transsexual and transgender. These differences, if we don't understand, then we don't understand the issue. And that is the problem, that when you talk with any professional, he only talks about one thing. If you talk with a mullah, he talks only about one thing without knowing anything. When you talk with a doctor, he talks only about one thing without understanding any other aspect. But this is the role of the philosophers, the thinkers, ulul albab. They have to bring everything together as a polymath, and then they have to present it as a social doctor, the solutions to these issues. In 1955, he defined it as all those things that a person says, all those persons that a person says or does, or to disclose himself or herself as having the status of boy or man, girl or woman. That is why they are controlling the thought process, and thought process through the language, and language right from age 3. But now things have gone too far. Some women, unfortunately, are using the hormonal treatments while the baby is in the belly, while the baby is in the womb, to change the sex, because there's money. I'll show you the figures. These are not my figures. That when they use them, exploit them, the I and T particularly, the I and T in the LGBTQ, I and T, these are exploited. And there is money. And other markets, they work on that, like liquor market, like gambling. And the incomes in those communities, which have been documented, studied, statistics officially, they are earning more than doctors, CPAs, and attorneys. I'll show you these surveys. Modern academic sense of the word in context of social roles that's changed, and the feminist movement joined hands, and it went. And then there is one thing more which appeared from 1970s, when these feminist theories, when these are theories and they become movement, and then they coin terminology, they publicize it, they propagate, people accept it through media. This new term Leave aside LGBT, everything. Leave every moral debate on this issue. Look at this theory. This has appeared, this is there now. From 70s, which theorizes that human nature is essentially epicene. Epicene. It is blind. And what does that mean? That sex is blind to distinguish between wife and mother. Sex is blind to distinguish between wife and mother, girlfriend and mother, girlfriend and sister. Epicene. Kindly look into this philosophy. As we say, the law is blind. In legal discussions, the law is blind. Here also, you see, epicene. Human nature, they say, is a big blame. I'll show you also this theory. It is not just I've just presented one side that they say this, but I'll show you that was the real position from the scientists, from the biologists, from the medicine. No, this is wrong. Human nature is not blind. And I'll show you that. Now, it's essentially epicene, it's blind, and social distinctions based on sex are arbitrarily constructed. We have arbitrarily constructed these walls between male and female, and between male and male, and between female and female, nothing like mother or sister, no distinction. Socially constructed, and I'll also show you one very important study. Why there is so much emphasis for training the child right from the lap, mother's lap, attachment, his heart. Dr. Deepak Chopra and other doctors also. Dr. Deepak Chopra in quantum healing says that when the mother takes the lap, when they takes the infant in the lap for feeding, for suckling, the hearts of the mother and the child beat and synchronize. They synchronize. And these things, proximity, affinity, right from the beginning, between siblings and between mother and child and father and child, that ultimately brings in haya, that is called haya, or that brings in morality. That brings in morality. But here is totally a different theory, which is being presented. I have given the definition that what do they mean by epicenity? Epicenity is the lack of gender distinction. I can't distinguish between two genders. For me, they are both. Both are the same. Mother and father is the same. Girlfriend and sister is the same. Brother and sister is the same. With reduced emphasis, there's no emphasis in this theory on masculine to highlight feminine, to distinguish from feminine. These are theories. And this is feminist theory. It admits androgyny, having both masculine and feminine characteristics, traits. What does the B show in LGBT? I had explained B. It has both traits. The adjective, it's actually adjective, the adjective, which is called the third gender, or it is sometimes said gender neutral, describes epicenity. Now they are taking biological cover. That epicenity means that when a person has both the sexes, and that is then blind. It is blind to distinguish between male and female. This is the theory, and this is part of LGBT. Both terms are associated with the terms, these are now finer discussions. I'm not going into these things. Use of gender as alternative to sex. I have discussed it a bit. It is not an alternative to sex or is a biological category. We may use, as they are using, gender as an alternative to the word sex. They could do that only when it was the same biological category. But when they themselves say that sex is a biological category and gender is a social category, then why they can use it as an alternative? I don't know whether it's very clear. On the one hand, you say that one is biological and the other is social, and on the other hand, you use it without distinction. One alternative for the other. Gender as an alternative to the sex is becoming widespread without distinction. Today is widespread. In rural societies, however, the situation is different. Now, gender identity and gender roles I have described, but I mentioned earlier, I'm not going into these details, but these are important to understand. And these are all with references. These differences, in to some extent, in depth, I have tried to explain, but I will explain only those which are, I think, very important. I will only show things which are of greater interest to you. Now, this is an important change which has come after, particularly after 80s, and towards the end of the 20th century and in the beginning of century, and it is increasing. It is increasing. It is now a political problem also. Gender is politically and therefore socially controlled. Now, from social, it's coming to political. And I'll show you. It's not that it has just happened, but through well-structured meetings of the leadership of the LGBT and people who are supporting it. They've adopted these policies that now we have to enter media and how to control it. Now we have to enter politics, how to control it. These are stated, declared policies. Gender is politically and therefore socially controlled rather than woman being something one is, it's something one does. What does that mean? This means that it's not sufficient that some person is a woman, some person wears dress like a woman, some person talks like a woman. No, woman is woman only when woman is able to do what she wants to do, what she does herself, as she feels. This is the philosophy which is being presented. The gender expression, I mentioned it. I'm not going into its deeper analysis. Now, I have analyzed here the biological scientific position. But since I've mentioned it, I'm not going into these details. These are scientific explanations that why the explanations which are being given, why those explanations are wrong. The genotype, the phenotype, the chromosomes, the genetics. I've discussed everything, analyzed. If anybody's interested in that, I will explain that also. Allah willing, Allah may help me. a deep subject. I'm coming to now. These things have been accepted. Last time I had shown you European perspective, where various international European organizations they've accepted. Now at the United Nations, these things are coming in their definitions, in their language, in their conventions, in their documents, in their literature, being used, accepted. This is very interesting. Let me, if you allow me, sometimes very shrewd explanations are given. Very shrewd. Look at this explanation which is coming up. That gender expression does not necessarily connect to sexuality. Very innocent. No, when we are talking of gender, when we are doing these things, saying these things, does not mean that sex has come to my mind. How? Individuals are interpreted as more masculine if lesbian. If the women are lesbian, they say that they are more masculine because they are performing male roles. Look at the shrewd explanation. And this is how they are given equality. And more feminine if gay. The gay people, when they're performing, they are expressing their femininity. Regardless of individual's gender explanation. How we can ultimately limit the definition of gender and sex, male and female. For example, drag artists, now this has a historical background. As I said, from San Francisco, cross-dressing. It started with cross-dressing, circle dance, and then the close dance, and then the homosexual laws, anti-homosexual laws, which were already there, that the homosexuality was punishable by death, they dissolved. Drag artists impersonate as men and women in bar and nightclubs. In many nightclubs even today, they impersonate. Drag artists. Drag artists are those artists that previously you must have seen in the operas, in soap operas, in street performances, that women are male also, but women particularly, they would, when they cross dress, or when they dress like a woman, they use very long dresses, which drag on the floor, which drag on the ground. These are called drag artists. This was already there. This fashion was already there. Historically, it was there. So it has a history. Drag artists, then cross dresses, then the circle dances, then came this cross dances, music, and then it came into poetry, and then so on. It's a long history. Now, social constructionism of homosexuality. There's a great debate. I've tried my best to analyze all its aspects, but still I can't claim that I know everything, but I have explained these things. It's construct that what it is. Previously, historically, it was called horphodomy. Then it was given a civilized name, and it was named as homosexuality. And then when it was accepted after San Francisco process, it was given the name gay. Before that, before 50s, word gay was used in dictionary, in grammar, in schools, in colleges. We have ourselves read in these schools, studied in the schools. In Shakespeare's dramas, the word gay is used, and it was used just as a happy person, merry person, merry-making person. But now then they picked up a more civilized word, gay. Till 1960s, homosexuality was treated as a psychological disorder. But then they said, no, it has a stigma. They changed the word. So there's a history how this changed its colors. Then I've shown that at one time in New York, after that incident of Stonewall Inn, raid by these New York police, after that, many things happened, many changes took place, and they made a declaration that if woman has to be given equality, then the family must be demolished and the patriarchy must be demolished. So it is in that perspective that they dropped the word family and they started using community, and then they got it accepted as minority. Now it has constitutional protections. Now this analysis of lesbianism, this is in itself is a subject. Each one of them is a subject, but I have tried to limit it and define them, explain them, each of them. Now, how the simple has been complicated beyond explanation. Actually, we started at 7:30, so I think I'll take 5-10 minutes and I'll finish. How the simple has been complicated beyond explanation. What is simple? This is about the simple. All along in human history, we only knew these things: male, female, intersex. That's all. But now it has been and the gender referred to masculine, feminine, neutral, and things like that. But how the most complicated, how it has been made most complicated, it has been increasingly leading to all free for all free, everything free for all, for everybody. This is the approach. All free for all, without parameters and prohibitions, which historically protected the domains of family, culture, and civilization. Anything which protects the family has to be demolished. Today, it is being made increasingly legal. It has already been legalized, everything, but still they are not happy. Day before yesterday, I was talking to a doctor, and he said that these are poor people who are not being listened to. They are not heard even. They are not given their rights. They're downtrodden. They are not given legal rights. Increasingly legal, and in the society, they are becoming more and more acceptable. I gave the names while discussing with that person, that a person, a boy from Pakistan, married another man in New York, and his mother from Pakistan, Muslim lady, came to attend the marriage and lives with him. And these are very well-known names of the society at the top. Everybody knows them. Just to mention the name, I don't think there is anybody in Pakistan who doesn't know that person. These are becoming acceptable. You have seen in the LGBT line, there is one A, but not one A, but two A's. One A represents the allies. Who are the allies? You and me are the allies. The silent majority is the allies. The society is the allies who are accepting them. That A stands there. The other is asexual. There are two A's, there are two Q's in the LGBTQ. One A is for allies, for you and me, acceptable or at least tolerable. You say, no, what we can do, the boy is doing this, the girl is doing this. It has become tolerable. Worldwide, for 8 billion population on the planet, by interest groups and individuals to describe it the way they claim, they want the way they describe themselves, to experience and want to express themselves sexually. And something more to this. At any time, anywhere, at any place, differently in the morning, differently in the evening, and in Europe and at in certain countries, it has been permissible. It has been permissible. It is permissible even to go for the actual act of performance on the platform, on the airport, in the bogie, in the train. No holds barred, permissible. And one country, I don't know the details, but at least there was one news in the media, and it continued for a long time on the internet, that one country has allowed, I'm not naming that, has allowed it as a sport, and there will be games in this, national and international games. They was declared it as sport, though it involves even momentary, even if it is just a momentary thing, biological, psychological, physical, erotic, emotional, social, whatever feeling. Even when someone is expressing or showing erotic feeling, it doesn't matter. It's not now part of the morality. It is part of one's own freedom. Our behavior completely demolishing foundation and stable culture of family, culture, and civilization, with grave, lasting implications for generations. And the definition of culture, I'm reminding this, that there can be no culture without taboos. It is not possible to have any culture, define any culture. Even LGBT will adopt some certain taboos. There can be no, if they claim that it is a culture, culture cannot be without taboos. But here, everything is crumbling, getting demolished. Different terms, descriptions, and labels have been created for sex orientations and gender identities that you already know. Number of alphabets are limited, 26. And acronyms become too cumbersome. LGBTQ, AAQQ, how many you can use? So what is the solution? The current exhaustive list consists of terms that are mostly self-explanatory. Now, these are further being supported by symbols. Symbols in flowers, objects, colors, flags, items of daily use, items of dress, and that is how it explains different aspects of 107 so far. The list is expanding. So far, 107 types of genders. If ever-expanding trend continues, if this continues, soon individual personal names will become the brands. For example, somebody's name is A. Now his name is A. will be the brand, and it will indicate his type of gender. People will know when you mention some name, that people will know that that means he is so and so. Will be used as brand names, advertising personal features, that he has now so many lesbian features, gay features, so many features in his performance of one's own sex orientations and gender roles and their advantages over other brands. One is better than the other. A is better than B. Below are 107 gender identities. I think I leave here. This is a very lengthy list. So this list and so many other things which are very surprisingly fascinating, that we'll discuss, Allah willing, next time. And now, if you have any question, the one thing I may remind, that kindly treat it as a moral issue within the family, within the community, but don't use it as a political issue. Once you use it as a political issue, then there are many and different challenges, then we will be lost. We may segregate it. I don't say that you don't ever consider it. It has political dimension, but the political dimensions must be tackled at the political dimensions, but segregate it, treat it as a moral issue within the family, within yourself, and don't intermix it, don't mix it up. Keep it separate. Then we'll be able to understand and adopt a policy. And I also warn about the laws and the constitutional protections which are there, that you cannot discriminate because they have protections of a minority and a community. You have to discuss it as a social issue which has different dimensions, and you want to tackle those different social issues in a legal way, without violating any rule or regulation, or without discriminating against any one member of the LGBT or LGBT itself. So be aware of the legal position also, and separate the political side, deal with it as a moral issue in the masjid, in the madrasa, in the home, in the family, in your own community, and also your ourselves. This is my view, but you may have any view. It's up to you. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzat amma yasifuna wa salamun alal mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت، وعافنا فيمن عافيت، وتولنا فيمن توليت، وبارك اللهم لنا فيما أعطيت، وقنا واصرف عنا شر ما قضيت. اللهم ادخلنا برحمتك في عبادك الصالحين. اللهم اخرجنا من ظلمات الجهل والوهم إلى أنوار العلم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا، وانفعنا بما علمتنا، وزدنا علما. اللهم اجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. اللهم اكفنا بحلالك عن حرامك، وبطاعتك عن معصيتك، وفضلك عن من سواك. اللهم بفضلك ورحمتك أعلي كلمة الحق والدين. اللهم انصر الإسلام وعز المسلمين يا أكرم الأكرمين. Oh Allah, spread your mercy upon us, shower us with your blessings, increase our knowledge, grant us forgiveness, and reward us with the company of the prophets in the Firdaus al-A'la. Oh Allah, forgive our parents and all our friends and relatives who have passed away. Oh Allah, make their graves garden from heaven and grant them the Firdaus al-A'la. Oh Allah, we have many of our friends and relatives who are sick. Oh Allah, grant to all of them full and speedy recovery. Oh Allah, guide our children, protect them and make them righteous. Oh Allah, we ask you every name you have elected for yourself, that none of us leave this gathering but his pains have been relieved, his worries have been removed, his debts have been paid, his weaknesses have been concealed, his sins have been forgiven, and his needs have been fulfilled. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على خير المرسلين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.